I know we could talk about gear until we are blue in the face, you know, new camera bodies, new lenses, what the image quality is like, what the ISO performance is like, yada, 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 yada. But when it comes to photography, there is one element that is far more important than anything else: light. Because photography is about photographs, and a photograph is captured light. So if your lighting is bad, your image will be bad. Doesn't matter how good your equipment is, bad light will make a bad photograph even with the best equipment. But good light can make a good photograph even with bad equipment. Now, some of you have asked me on multiple occasions to do a kind of tutorial and a rundown about how to use flash in an image. And my intention was actually to do another Photography 101 episode all about flash, except it was just crippling me trying to do it, and in the end I kind of just decided that the Photography 101, the whole green screen setup and that sort of thing, really wasn't working. So basically this is going to be that Photography 101 episode, even though it's not actually called Photography 101. And I will say, before we kick off, I will apologize now because I am in a very, very bad mood, because in trying to set up to do this video, I've just managed to destroy a 500 watt flash head. That is the remnants of it all in there. So I'll try and be as chirpy as I can with this. So when it comes to light, either still images or video is the same sort of story. It's about getting the right light in the right places. So for this video, I'm basically going to demonstrate how you manipulate the light by using continuous lights rather than flashes, because in a video you can't see the flash, or at least you can only see it for a split second, but the principles remain exactly the same. Whenever you're trying to create an image, you just need to build the light up. You need to build it up layer on layer in exactly the way as taking an image and thinking, what's my background, what's my foreground, what's my main subject. You work the same with light. So there's three main types of light to consider. There's your key light, or your main light, there's your fill light, and then there's your backlight. And you've just got to build these together and make sure that they're working well with each other and not clashing. So to talk you through this now, let's turn all the lights off and we'll build them up one by one. So here we have only ambient light. We've got a little bit of light coming through the window. Now, one, it's quite a small window. Two, it's a very overcast day. So this really isn't going to do much to a finished picture. Now, what is a key light? Well, your key light is your main source of light for your subject. So as you can see, here we are. I'm now nice and brightly lit. You can see me. However, a couple of things to bear in mind. One, the key light isn't lighting up the background. So I'm kind of blending into the background here. But the thing you'll notice is that one side of my face is now completely in shadow because there's only one main light source. So we need to kind of fill in those shadows a little bit. And this is where we get a fill light from. Now, key thing to remember with a fill light is you don't want it to be as bright as your main light, because you only want to kind of take the edge off the shadows. You don't want to completely fill them in, because if you make the two lights exactly the same intensity, then there's not going to be any definition to the face. So as you can see with both lights on, this side of my face is brighter than this side. But there's still some shadowing around this side of the face that kind of adds a bit of three-dimensional characteristics to your subject. But now we still have the problem that the background is just in complete darkness. So let's start to look at backlights. So with the main lights off, let's look towards backlights. So for this instance, I have two continuous lights that are shining orange light onto my background. Now, they're kind of not particularly bright by comparison to the main lights because I don't want the background to be the subject. Obviously, I am the subject, so I need to be kind of brighter than the background. But I still need some light on the background to show that there's something there. So when you add the key light and fill light back in, you can now see that there's at least some definition to the background, but I'm still where your eye is drawn to. But now we have another problem. Because I'm wearing a black t-shirt, the background behind me is quite dark, I'm starting to blend in to the background, so I'm looking like a floating head. So we need to add some isolation. This is where another backlight comes in handy. So, lights back off. So what I do is I have a small light situated just behind me that's shining straight onto my back. So you can see it doesn't really do much in the grand scheme of things. All it's really doing is just adding a little bit of separation along my shoulder line to kind of subconsciously show people that I'm not joined to the background, that there is some distance there. Then we start to build it back up and add the backlight back in. Then we add a main light. And then we add a fill light. And there you have it. From absolutely nothing, we've started to build up this scene now. And it works exactly the same if you're doing still images. The only difference is the sources of light that you are using changes slightly. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's great, but what settings do I need to use? And the truth is, I can't give you the settings because there's no universal answer. It entirely depends on the situation you're in and the look of the image that you're going for. Every image is completely unique depending on where you are, the environment you're in, and the ambient light that you are already dealing with, because that's always going to be different in every single scenario. Realistically, it's only controlled environments such as here, studios and that sort of thing where everything is artificial light. If you're shooting outside, you are always going to have some ambient light to play with, and that's normally either going to be your main light or your fill light. So you might be taking a portrait outside, you've got the sun maybe acting as your main light, but it's just casting some shadows on this side of the face. You could either use a reflector to reflect some of that sunlight back just to fill in those shadows, or you could situate a flash gun over here to put that light on there for you. But what settings you use depends on the situation, because it depends on how bright the sun is, if there's anything obstructing it. You know, if there's a faint layer of cloud in front of the sun, it's going to soften that light a lot more than if it's a completely clear day. Or maybe the sun's coming through some trees or something. So the intensity from the main light is going to dictate how bright you need the fill light to be, because remember, the fill light you want dimmer than the main light so it doesn't completely flatten out the face. But then again, sometimes for silhouette shots, your main light is actually your backlight, and you don't have any fill light. This, for example, is a wedding picture I took a few years ago using a single flashlight. Now, for that particular photograph, I specifically wanted just the silhouette outline of the couple. So I didn't want any other ambient light around. So I made sure that I used a fast enough shutter and I clamped my aperture down enough that all of the ambient light around was completely cut out. And then I made sure that the flash was powerful enough to make that outline and be picked up by the camera. Oh, this is another silhouette shot that I did, but with this one incorporating the sunset. So the sunset created enough of a silhouette already, but then the lower half of the couple was kind of completely masked in shadow. So I put a flashlight behind them, firing through them, in order to just add that isolation between them and the background, which was what I was talking about earlier. So when it comes to working with light, it's really a case of building up your image layer on layer. But how you go about building it is going to really depend on the situation that you're in. For example, ambient light, a lot of the time, you have no real control over. So if your ambient light is lighting up your background, you need to set your camera settings up in advance so that your ambient light is how you want it to be, and then you then start to add the artificial light in to light your subject up how you want. Likewise, if your ambient light is lighting your subject, get your camera settings how you want, see where you need extra light adding, and then add it from there. But when it comes to learning about light, you can read books or advice from other people until you are blue in the face, but the only way that you're ever really going to learn and get your head around it is to go out and play around with it. Start using your flash, start trying to take some pictures, and throw yourself in purposely tricky situations. You know, purposely put the sun behind you so that you've got to think about it and work out how you need to adapt the light in order to get the shot that you want. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope this was of some help to at least one person out there. If you have any questions, queries, or you just want to call me a complete idiot for managing to break a light, comment box is down below. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.